We'll wing it.
And Christie is attached.
All right. Welcome. Can't remember if we did a pledge on workshops.
I think we just jumped in.
I don't think
It's up
so.
to you, you know.
We'll just jump right in. Workshop. Budget workshop today. Let me just let Matt know.
He's
So,
not coming.
Yeah,
right,
I'm gonna
but
let
we
him
didn't know if
there-
you wanted to.
There is a
We
Zoom.
figured that
Oh,
he'd be busy with the baby.
sounds like baby's on its way.
Gotta get to my, so we're jumping,
Make sure Christie can hear us.
what?
Can Christie hear us?
Christy, can you hear us? Okay, great. So we need to give you the presentation. Here's one.
Oh, I've passed them out.
Oh, they've already got them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whoever wanted to print a
Awesome.
copy, yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna do kind of similar to what we did last time, and that is go over your data requests that came up at the last meeting. Then we're gonna do update on expenditures based on some new information, a request about the SRO position, and then we're gonna go over the revenue portion of the budget, okay? And so we're gonna start with data requests, and Sheena, you're kicking us off with updates. This is different, we don't really have handouts, it's more narrative, discussion.
Yep.
So Bus Depot electricity, you wanna say the work you've done on that and what you found out?
So I did collect go over the electricity bills from this fiscal year, as well as I pulled the I asked Sabatis Public Works in the town to provide their electricity bills from Public Works and compared the two, just to see, what their trends were. They followed the same seasonal trends as we did. I didn't see anything that would be alarming or looked off comparing the two. Their usage looked appropriate for what they do there and followed the trends that we do. Most of our usage is off-peak hours, which makes sense because they're plugged in the evening and at night. So that's kind of where we ended that there. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Do we know what they're drawing for amperage, each one? Because we should be able to figure out what the cost is, because it's so much per kilowatt hour of
Yep, and it
electricity.
was .0.
It was in line with, we asked what the
Yeah.
CMP rate is, and that's what
Yeah.
we're being charged.
Okay,
Yeah.
It was like a tenth under what the standard rate is.
Yeah.
So that aligned with, and online it says different companies or businesses.
I didn't know
can
maybe
have
if there was,
different rates.
we were drawing more wattage
Right.
than we should be, because of, could be a ground out, could be,
Right, yep. And now that it's warmed up, we've had a warmer month, our CMP bill has dropped. So we just got that
Okay.
yesterday actually, and it looked as I was expecting it to.
I know it's difficult, but did you determine that the only thing that's on that meter is our bus plugins?
So I called CMP, and they're so helpful. They wanted us to do our own breaker check. So doing that, go down each breaker, turn it off the same amount of time for each one, and look at your usage on your account. It's like,
So Sheena and I discussed whether we would do that or not. So they get their own bill and we get our own bill.
Yeah.
So
they don't bill us.
Right, they don't get a bill and then send us a bill for our
Sure.
portion.
Right.
So just to be clear, because I didn't understand that from our last conversation. So they said the only way you could determine is if you go by hand, go over and check it. And we haven't had an opportunity to do that. And I'm hoping if Stephen, Eldridge comes to our town meeting, we can discuss that as a possibility.
Yeah. that they would not come out.
Yeah, no. I think they would-
To answer that question,
Yeah.
they wouldn't come out.
We would have to test it.
Yeah, it should be simple enough just to go breaker by breaker. Now, there can't be that many, right? Because there's how many?
How many poles?
Yeah,
Probably 8.
yeah, so 8 breakers. Yeah, they have the individually breaker, I would think.
I haven't seen it personally, so I'm not sure, but,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Part of the issue is the breaker box, right, is past the line.
yes, it is past
A
that yellow
delicate
line.
situation.
Yeah, we have to ask permission.
Yeah.
So we have to stay, you know, on friendly terms, so we want to do it in a respectful way.
Yeah.
Gas pump maintenance,
Yep.
update on that.
So we looked with each town just to confirm that we're being charged and, you know, paying that surcharge. So when maintenance comes due, we're contributing. And I do have the bucket amounts with each town. I know of maintenance that's been done on both pumps this year and we have not received a bill. So I'm gonna say that we're not paying extra additionally on top of the surcharge. Any questions on that?
I guess my question would be is there an amount that we have in escrow for maintenance?
Built in there, I mean, I have the number for this fiscal school year of what's in
Right.
those buckets that we've contributed to. I don't know if they take and deduct
Because
from
they're
that
supposed to
bucket.
pay the 10% surcharge also. And when that question was asked in the past, it was, well, we know what our numbers are, and when the time comes, we'll just take the money out of undesignated fund balance. So there was no line in the budget
Yeah.
for, you know, tank maintenance, is what they're telling us.
Okay,
And they're not holding our money in escrow. You know, not in escrow, but in a designated account
to pay for that, yeah,
to pay for.
yeah. I mean, I easily can keep track of that surcharge.
Yeah, that's what I
rate.
mean,
So
yeah.
Yeah,
if
like.
it came down the
we-
pipe.
Yes, we
got a
can
bill,
calculate it.
Yeah, if we got a bill for maintenance or whatnot, then that would absolutely be coming up because
Right.
we do contribute to
Right,
that
oh,
bucket,
absolutely.
you know?
I mean, we've been contributing, at least that I know of, for 20 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I know of quite a bit of maintenance that's getting done on the Litchfield one.
Right.
Right now. That's gonna be probably a pretty penny on them, but there's been no discussion of us contributing towards that beyond our surcharge.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Sheena. And so, Mark, you're next. So I appreciate everybody, you know, taking the time to research and do some digging
Yeah.
for you to get you some of these answers.
Good evening, everyone. Hope everybody had a good day.
So Mark, your maintenance input.
Yes, so, this past week, what I did is I reached out to every building principal, and I wanted to get some insight on buildings in general, what everybody's thoughts are, what they're hearing. I was telling Sam today, I was really overwhelmed with everybody's response to the custodial staff and to the buildings. At the end of the day, if you asked any head custodian in this district, they tell you they do not have enough head custodians to get the job done complete. Expectations when I first started this job 25 years ago was sealing the floor 100% in the buildings, With the staff that we had and the reports that I got back from Jenny, Marco, everybody's replied, it was overwhelming, and I've never been more proud in my life. I was digging for anything I expected a little bit of negative feedback at points, and I have not gotten it. Everybody wrote wonderful things about the custodial staff and things that come to my attention from like a Marco or Jenny, just saying the response time from custodians in general when there's a problem. I couldn't be more proud of this group of people we have in these buildings. So maintenance-wise, etc. It seems like the communication's really open for us. Head custodians are reporting to principals, principals are reporting to the head custodians well, and it's coming back to us as well. So I think with the reports from the principals, especially with, say, Jan in the old building, right? But she had nothing but compliments and said, we know the building's old. but your custodial staff goes above and beyond, and I'm really happy with how they maintain. So that made me feel pretty darn good.
And you do regular walk around.
Absolutely, yep,
Right.
yep. I found that this last month, I have not been in the schools as much as I would like with everything going on. It's been crazy. But yeah, definitely get through the buildings, walkthroughs, and anytime there's a problem, I need to lay eyes on it, even if it's the littlest problem. It's just who I am. I've got to go check it out, so. Any questions on that? All right.
Parking lot lighting.
Yes, lighting. So I went and did a couple spot checks at night. Libby Tozier by far is creepy and spooky out back of there at night. The middle school, we're still honestly, I'm gonna go over and meet Paul, and we're gonna try to determine what is the issue over there. Paul felt the lighting was really good, and Deb felt the lighting's pretty good at the middle school. Libby Tozier, not so good. So probably approximately right now, I would say that those lights at Libby Tozier are installed, and Paul has been working on it. And there was not a big cost to us, but it's gonna be a lot safer for anybody coming in and out of the buildings.
And Paul's our electrician.
He sure is, yeah, so he jumped right on that for us, made it right. Anything else? Any questions, guys?
The lighting.
Robbie?
I know there's been some questions in the past about the academy and, you know, Libby Tozier being
Yep.
hooked up and, you know, the heat and electricity
Mhm.
part. Is there any, is there an advantage to breaking that out? I mean, I don't know what the cost is for the academy
I-
heat-wise, and I know it would be tough because of the way the system's designed. We looked at it in the past.
Yeah, so we'd almost have to separate the heating systems, and they would have their own
Right.
source, correct, yeah. That's been heartburn for me since the day I started.
Right.
And, you know, there's a lot of area of opportunity, but I don't realistically know where we go with that.
Yeah.
It's a pretty tricky situation.
I mean, I don't know if we could break out, they use 10%, they use 5%,
Yep.
they use, you know, that would probably be the only way that we could break that out.
By all means, and
You know, if we went by square footage wise, maybe we could say, you know, they got 8% of the square footage,
Yep.
we're gonna charge you 8% of the fuel and electricity costs.
Yep. And as we know, everything's getting more expensive.
Sure.
And, you know, and how do we know the heating cycle in that building, right?
Right.
Like, is it lagging? Is it, you know, we know. I've really beat myself up on these thoughts of that building.
Yeah, okay.
And, you know, it's in my heart. I've talked to Katie about issues with it, and, you know, I honestly don't know where we would ever start with that.
Right.
But, you know, they seem to really love it, and the ties to it are immense,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
So
okay.
my comment there would be, you know, that is something we could definitely work on, is a memorandum of understanding or agreement. We don't have one of those in place. Nicole and I have talked about the only way to really solidify that that property is RSU4 is you have to do an approval at the board level. It's not their approval.
Right.
It's you taking action that is our property. Because and I think I shared this with the consolidation committee, who was on the consolidation committee, is if you go to the records on the property, it's RSU4 property.
Right.
So it's a matter of getting an agree, here, and we'd have the attorney draw up what is the language, because that's what he said, you just need to take action at your board level.
Okay,
The tricky part is like everything else. Taxpayers will pay taxpayers, right? So if we push on the senior, that raises taxes in Litchfield. It might give us revenue, you know what I mean? It's
Right,
like we
yeah,
all
I
have to
know.
play somewhat in the
yeah, I
in the
understand, but I'm
sandbox.
just saying that I
Right.
don't think there's enough, how can I put this? There's enough acknowledgement that we're taking care of that building.
Yes, that's a fair,
As
that's,
far as heat and electricity
Yeah.
goes. I know we're not doing the maintenance, we didn't do the windows in it, we didn't, you know what I mean?
they've updated stuff,
They've
yes.
updated stuff as they went,
They have.
which is great,
Mm-hmm.
but, you know, the heat and electricity is a major expense.
Yeah, and we do help them on technology
Right.
and things that they might need. And so, you know, we can talk to Kelly more about if we weren't supplying this, what would happen, you know? How can we help work together?
Yeah.
And I think that MOU is the starting point.
Sure.
Like, what is your responsibility, what's our responsibility? And then it can come to the board and you all can,
Okay.
you know, but I think that's definitely, and Kelly knows, I think we've talked to Kelly a little bit about that. Was there ever one in place? I'm not sure. There's, you know, so that definitely, they're aware that we share,
Yeah.
you know. And they did a wonderful concert for us, the
Yeah, sure.
group. So there's different things, but, yeah. Okay, but we'll make note of that. The next one was the budget without SRO, and Sam's gonna go into numbers and things like that as we go through the budget. Our updates with our expenditures, and Sheena forgot to mention something about lowering the budget for transportation.
A little bit.
So come up because, you know, you got feedback from the board, you acted upon it, and you reduced your budget.
So we were able to secure some, an agreement with Dennison Lubricant for DEF. With that, we're getting it a lot cheaper, rate per gallon, so we were able to reduce that. I reduced it by $2,500. So we got it all set up today, had it delivered at the high school, got our pump in, so we're gonna deplete what we've got remaining at the Public Works there in the jugs and move to 55-gallon drums.
Yeah, thank you. So the next are the totals, and Sam said she's had to slice it and dice it a couple different ways and updating things so that you had at least the closest to the numbers. We did get our the insurance band. We do not have our amount. So as I think I shared with you in your update, the band, the highest is 14%. We budgeted at 15%. Right now, we don't feel comfortable doing a reduction in that area because we don't know hiring, you know, there's people, you know, it's this time of year as they start to think about, am I gonna stay with family? Am I gonna stay with single? Am I getting married? You know, there's a lot of pieces. And so if we make it so tight, there's no wiggle room, then we're trying to make up the difference in other areas. So we're gonna hold right now where we are until we find out, you know, like we said, maybe we'll have even better news. We're not 14%. So, you know, that wiggle room of anything beyond 1%, we will definitely do a reduction. So if it came in at 13.5, we'd make that 0.5% difference, okay? But we want to make you aware we did not make any adjustments to health insurance proposal.
Sorry.
Yeah.
How much would 1%, what's a 1%, Sam?
About 33,000.
33,000, okay.
Yeah, because the 3% we were poised to add if the band came in at 18.
Right,
Put us around 100 for an increase
okay.
to the general.
So at
fund.
least we know the number is
Exactly.
33,000%,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so we can do that. So you can see the first one is SPS Open. It's at a 5.53% increase, $1.2 million. The next one is at Closed, which is at 3.7% increase at $838,000 approximately. And then as requested, could we see it without an SRO position, which would put with it open at 4.9%, which is 1.1 million. And then with it closed and no SRO position would be 3% at 696,000.
And you'll see that reduction in cost center 9, which is where the SRO is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question would be, Katie,
Yeah, and then Teresa, I saw your hand go too.
oh, sorry.
No, that's
I
okay.
didn't see your hands, I'm
Yeah, no.
sorry. You want to go ahead?
I was just hoping you could say what SRO stands for
Oh,
in
School
case
Resource
someone's listening.
Officer. Yeah, thank you, Teresa, School Resource Officer. And that cost is $142,000.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So the question I was gonna ask is,
Sure.
is there a way that we could put in the warrant the budget without the RSO and with the RSO, allowing the citizens to vote on it if they want it? Right? I'm not sure if we could or not.
I don't think so.
I don't think so, I mean,
I mean,
We'd
they
have to have
have the right to act on the floor.
Right, that's
Yeah,
what I'm
they can reduce
saying.
it
Somebody
by
on, somebody on
140.
the floor could say, you know, we want the RSO, we're gonna put the money in for the RSO, but I'm not sure people know that. That's my point.
Right. I mean, this is a tough one, we've talked about it a
Yeah.
lot. This is a tough one, right? It's
Yeah.
safety, it's student safety, right? So, yes, this year we have not had an SRO, and, you know, we do work with our different police, you know, Kennebec County, Androscoggin County, and Sabattis. So this is a big decision on whether you're doing it for, you know, safety reasons, or you're gonna rely on your local units to cover if there was an emergency. So this is a tough one, and it's one that, you know, you gotta really think through about what is this for our students and our staff. So this one I think is, you know, something you all can debate on what you know, where you wanna land on that. We're gonna circle back to the amounts as we get deeper into the revenue, like how much is this gonna cost in these different scenarios. And that, I think, will drive the discussion more about, okay, well, what is this gonna cost us, okay? We didn't do school nutrition last time, so Mark, you're coming back up, I think, to
Yes, ma'am.
go over the slides. So we wanna make sure you knew where our school nutrition landed, and then we'll get deep into the revenue.
So as Mark comes up, just remember that school nutrition is a distinct fund, so it's separate from the general fund, similar to adult education, and it's voted on separately at the public budget meeting.
Good evening again. All right. School nutrition, of course. So this is pretty much a staffing graph. You know, it's stating that if Sabattis Primary does not close, our staffing does not change. With Sabattis Primary closed for food service, it's highlighted where there would be change. So we're looking at an assistant food manager would be the reduction. The extra worker will be going to Carrie Ricker, and you can see the it, you know, increases by 1 worker. Any questions on the staffing? It's pretty cut and dry. Slide number 12, of course, this is just showing our lunches and breakfast served, reimbursement as well. You can see that after February, we served about 85,000 lunches, and through February for the breakfasts, about 58,000. Quite a good lunch and breakfast program rolling there. And again, pretty set forth numbers. I can't change them. They are what they are. But one thing I've noticed is some happy kids, and we are serving some pretty darn good meals.
And at this time, we have not heard anything about whether they're gonna continue to support free breakfast and lunch for all students.
Yep.
We haven't heard anything
No.
yet at this point.
And it's the topic, directors, you know,
Yeah.
we're in a group chat and we're talking about it and we're worried.
Right.
Everybody is talking about it. So we're just waiting for more input. And it impacts a lot as well. You know, we're worried about, you know, feeding the kids in the summer. There's just all these different programs right now that we're worried about. So I hope everybody just keeps that on their mind that, you know, these kids are worth fighting for. Some budget highlights, and going to slide 13. Of course, Director of Operations salary for food service responsibilities. We do have some good savings in there this year, so we will no longer need Allison from Lisbon to help with the director role. I'm taking that on myself, of course. And there's a good amount of savings there as well. And some things that continuously across the whole state and country, cost drivers. We have seen food go up, delivery go up, supplies go up. It's insane. You know, Sam and me have worked closely. We've done a lot of talking. There's some extra monies in there. I'd like to say it's not gonna get worse, but every bill we see through the year, it seems like it's been increases. And you know, things I was noticing, it's just the little cartons or little knickknacks that we are serving for the kids to well-round a meal. And it could be a utensil to a napkin to we've really tried to be fiscally responsible and try to find the best deals here, because the prices again are going through the roof. I've noticed napkins have gone up like 40% since I started in September. You know, so distributor-wise, you know, you get extra cost right across the board. Everything's going up, even for delivery. So it's been tough and it's been noticeable.
So Sam's gonna take you through the amounts on the slides and then have you look
I
at the
have a
budget.
question.
Sure.
Mark,
Yes, sir.
you mentioned napkins, right?
Yep.
You've seen them go up. Are we buying enough napkins to last us the whole year, or are we buying them throughout the year?
Well, throughout the year and as well, but with cost, Robbie, so we have some different vendors that we can concentrate on. So if we locked ourselves into one price, I think it could be detrimental to us. But with us, giving us the abilities and the manager's ordering abilities, they're really looking through their different vendors right now and finding the best bargain for the money.
Okay,
And it's working out. They're doing a great job with it.
yeah.
All right, so on slide 14, this is the salary and health insurance comparison that we've done for each of the cost centers in the general fund, comparing the version of the budget with SPS open and with SPS closed. So we are noting the differences with the SRO, but that's not impacting this fund, so we're only looking at these two versions for school nutrition. So in the version of the budget with SPS open, we have a modest increase to the salary. So at the negotiating table, some of the positions in school nutrition were raised to a little bit higher percentage than the rest of the collective in the first year for the contract because they needed to come up based on regional comps. So a little bit more generous increase to that salary line. For this fund, and then the health insurance, similar to all the others based on different elective coverages from where we are now to last year. And then when you look at the version with SPS closed, you'll see obviously a ding for health insurance and the salary, and that's that one position that Mark noted would be reduced if Sabat's primary were closed. And then looking at the fund in total, so Fund 2930, in the version where Sabatis primary is open, we're up, just over $1,250,000 there, so up at 1,073. And then the version with it closed, you're just over $1 million for food service, up 76,000 from last year. So we wanted to just give a little bit of history. We've kind of gone over this in years past. The local contribution to support the food service program here in RSU 4, going back a handful of years, it's fluctuated some. So just going back 5 years, it had been $100,000 in FY22 and then stayed consistent FY23. It increased to $150,000 in FY24, and then prior to Mark coming on board, Kathy had done some work to really bring down costs at the end of the year and really solicit some grants as well. So we had some carryover going into this fiscal year, so that allowed us to ask less of the local taxpayers to support school nutrition for this fiscal year that we're in. Given the increases, and when we go line by line, you'll note that food supplies that Mark talked about really driving cost up in food service, the ask of the local taxpayer is higher than last year. So with SPS open, it's $183,000 roughly, and with SPS closed, $132,000. And remember that the additional local tax assessment, adult education, and the school nutrition program all use the additional local calculation, the 50/50. This next couple of slides, 17 and 18, again, SPS open and SPS closed. This gives more of a breakdown to the different revenue streams. So we do ask from the local, but I wanted you to see the full picture too of where else we receive revenue to fund this program. So since COVID, we have received a lot of reimbursement from the state for the meals that Mark noted. And so we're banking on a little bit of an increase from the state subsidy based on our meal count.
Just a minute, somebody just came in. I just want to make sure they know where they're going, that's all. Okay? All right. Right, go
So
ahead.
we've increased that expectation in this budget in both versions from $720,000 to $750,000, and I'm hopeful that we'll see that when we approach or when we get into next year. The fresh fruits, vegetable, and produce grant revenue, we're going to anticipate a similar reward or award to what we had gotten this year, and cross our fingers that comes in the way we expect. Daily sales we're going to keep consistent as well. for revenue, and then fund balance, we anticipate a little bit less carryover in this fund than we had last year. So you'll notice that the state subsidy and fund balance almost just zero each other out and offset based on what we're predicting for the end of the year. And then if you look at slide 18, the only difference there is in the breakdown of the local, so the top 3 revenue lines. So asking a little bit less from Litchfield, Sabattis, and Wales to bring us to that budget amount for the program. Questions on that?
Yeah, Sam, that 142,799 is all 3 towns combined?
Yeah.
Okay, so it would break out by the 50/50 formula? Okay.
Yeah, so, well, yes and no. It's my favorite answer to a question like that, right? In FY '23, that was the last year that we did not have town-specific school nutrition revenue lines. And what it was, is it went into the general fund as Article 11, all other expenditures. So it went into the general fund as the pool of money we're asking from the towns. So if you look at it as that's 142,799 extra dollars we're asking, then it's using the additional local formula,
Okay.
because it would have been on top
Right.
of the other articles in the general
Yep.
fund. Yeah.
Do you recall why in FY '24 we had the reduction in daily sales? Because I recall increasing costs with, I know specifically with the milk. So do you know why we would see a significant drop in daily sales?
Yeah, actually, I think when I came on, when I looked at the budget that had been prepared, I believe that the $140,000 was left there as anticipated revenue in error. So it was more of what we would have expected if we weren't giving every student free breakfast and lunch. What do we get for sales from the meals for students who don't get free and reduced? So I think it was a holdover from kind of pre-COVID times when we didn't have that free meals for everybody. And then going into FY '24, one of the things that we really wanted to do to try to bring this fund out of the red and into the black was to try to generate sales for food that's non-reimbursable, like the a la carte, the ice cream at the high school. Mark could speak to it more, vending
as
machine
well
at
is
the
a
high
huge,
school,
huge
things
part
like
of
that.
So that's not actual, that's budgeted.
Where can we see the grants that we received? I mean, you have one there, FFVP grant. It shows revenue for FY '26 though, so. You mentioned Kathy had some grants that are we no longer getting those grants? Can we apply for those grants?
FFVP we get.
Yeah.
It's an allotted amount of money, and the reason that is, it says what, 40 grand is because we can get up to 40 grand reimbursement for that.
Right, so we had a reduction in the local share because of grants that Kathy had applied for. Are some of those grants still available to us that we can apply for?
Well, I as well look at grants and seminars every single day. So if something that could benefit us, the Oakhurst grant is one I just applied for. Helps us up to $10,000 on, it could be a fridge to a stove to et cetera. I'm not sure, honestly, in the past what Kathy did do for grants, but I can tell you that I look for them daily, I apply for them, and it's a great way for us to help gap this bridge of income issues.
I believe she had done like an equipment grant, so that's how we had been able to purchase the kettle at
So can we dig up
Sabattis.
some of that historic
Yeah.
data that because I noticed is there an ice machine on here?
For purchase?
Yeah.
Yep. We have one in the middle school kitchen that has died.
Yeah,
I don't
so
know if it falls under the equipment grant that was just mentioned, but.
Yeah, so the thing with the equipment grant, and this is not entirely my wheelhouse, but what I do think I know about it is that it comes up sporadically, not periodically. So the reason that we have the FFP grant revenue listed is because FY '24 was the first year we received it, but we didn't budget for it because we hadn't applied for it when we were building the budget for FY '24. But we were able to budget for it in FY '25 and '26 because it's annual and periodic, and so we anticipate a similar grant award. With that equipment one and others that sort of pop up, they're less predictable. So I wouldn't want to bank on that revenue and then not be able to. But, similar to, the general fund, any unexpended funds that we have or any revenue above our expenses would go into fund balance. And if we were able to capitalize on a grant that we didn't see coming right now, then we would be able to roll over some fund balance like you were.
Offset
seeing.
tax
Yeah,
next year.
Right.
correct, yeah, like you saw in FY '25, yeah. Any other questions on the slides before we go line by line for school nutrition? All right, so I'll start us off. If you have the paper copy, we're looking at the school lunch expenses, and in the top right-hand corner, it would say SPS open. So just like we've done in the past, we'll start with that, and then we'll just note the reductions in the closed version. So, and if you're on the digital version, I believe it's school nutrition expenditures, SPS open is the title of that. So as looking at your salary lines, lines 1 through 21, that is your salary and benefits for all staff within this program. So we have 0.25 of our director of operations is in the food service budget, and then as Mark noted in the version with SPS open in line 2, that accounts for 13 food service staff in our district. And then in line 3, I didn't split out who we budget for FFVP in that different salary line. So in all likelihood, we will be paying for some folks' salary with that, but it would just be coming out of the bucket in line 2. So because we don't quite know our allocation yet, it's all gonna come from the same fund in the same place. I just left it as a 0 line item, and it'll dip out of line 2. And then going down, line 23 through 27, those are new lines this year. So if you've been on the board for a handful of years, you might remember that we're trying to tease apart our district-wide school nutrition and build school-specific school nutrition lines so that we can track our repair and maintenance, our expenses and things by building rather than just as a whole. So we're making incremental progress towards that, and this contracted services line that you're seeing for each of the schools, those have nested in the budget some monies that would have come from the district-wide contracted services line for their kitchen inspections. So what remains in line 28, which is the district-wide contracted services, is our Heartland POS system, or the digital system that the food service workers use when they ring in our meals and meal counts. So that software has a price tag to it, but what has been reduced, as Mark noted, was the contract with the Lisbon Food Service Director as a support in this past year. And then lines 29 through 34, those were new lines as of 2 years ago, building-based repair and maintenance lines for each of the kitchens. And then if you go down to line 37, that's where you'll note that pretty, significant or chunky increase in the food supplies, right? So that's a 14% increase to what we had in the budget for food supplies. So I know that's substantial, but it's what we anticipate in order to feed kids. And then just keeping going down the line here from 41 down to 45, those are your school-specific equipment lines for the food service departments or for each of the kitchens. And so you'll see Mark's notes within those lines about his anticipated equipment replacements for the buildings. Any questions about those expenditures?
Mark,
Yes, sir.
on the purchase of food and stuff like that, are we looking at anything, an increase with tariffs and stuff like that that's gonna happen, or we just gonna?
Again, we're talking about it.
Okay.
But to this point, there's no
But
planning
nobody at
for it,
the,
or,
nobody at
no,
the, higher level of
not yet. Like I
Department of Ed is looking at,
we're all talking, and they're all talking, and
Right.
that's kind of the rattling and the.
things like we get from out of the country, grapes, vegetables, fruit,
And, talking to some state connections in our director's pool, we're definitely concerned about that, Robbie.
Okay.
There definitely could, where it's gonna start or where it's gonna go, nobody has a clue right yet.
Yeah.
But we're anticipating in my mind, I mean, I'm sure everybody
Sure.
is, there might be some more increases.
Have you heard tariffs on food items?
Oh, yeah, a lot.
Really?
Paper goods too.
Paper goods,
Paper goods and,
anything coming from out of the country, like fruits,
I
vegetables.
have not heard that, and I'm in transportation, so that's news to me. Heard lumber, steel, aluminum,
Yeah,
car parts, but food is not one of them.
all right, thanks. I just didn't know if there
Oh,
was
yeah, of
anything
course.
that we were anticipating.
All right, so if we just, run through the SPS closed version, really the only changes are what we've already noted, right? That we are going down one full-time employee, so you'll see that in line 2. We're going from 13 to 12 food service staff. You'll note a slight difference in that health insurance line as well. And then as you go down through the report, you'll see that any of the 130 lines that end in 130 for Sabatis Primary for repair and maintenance, equipment, those have been zeroed out. So the contracted services line has also been zeroed out, but because there was no history in that line, you won't even see it represented in the report. But those are the changes between the two versions.
Mark, I'm seeing line 29 and line 32 for increases to repairs and maintenance. Could you just touch on those? Did you have plans for something?
well, yeah, so, part of it is, just trying to anticipate a little more funding for equipment going bad, certain things that I've done a lot of scoping out and give you guys all that information. Lots of our stuff's in our building is old and, we're Band-Aiding it. So definitely trying to be a little more proactive, so it's not just screaming us.
Emergency, like-
Yeah, because there's a lot.
Gotcha.
Teresa.
I know you had said if SBS closes, and that's the one we're looking at right now, we're gonna take out everything possible that we
Absolutely, yeah.
can, that works, that we can reuse in any of the buildings. Is there anything kitchen that you think?
Oh, yeah, in fact, for instance, dishwater, kettles, big dollar items will be coming with us. And to be honest with you, if the sprayers are great in the sink and they're spraying good, they're coming with us. We're gonna really work hard to be efficient and get everything and anything that we need out of there.
So Mark,
No ice machine or
And no, not unfortunately.
two burner stove?
Yeah,
Steam
yeah.
table.
Yeah, steam table, yeah,
Yeah.
refrigerated steam table.
Yeah, exactly.
so I know things like 2 bay sinks, triple bay sinks and stuff like that, we could use sometime.
Well, yeah,
But
absolutely.
the thing is storing it.
Well, correct, and, as I learned, in RSU too, when we shut down the 2 schools and went to the memorial school, we made some boo-boos along the way.
Yeah.
And things that we didn't factor in, it sounds great to have the dishwasher ripped out, the sinks, et cetera,
Right.
but the cost to do so from the tradesmen that are coming in to do it is
Sure.
a factor as well.
Right.
So I gotta kind of weigh that out, but like
Yeah.
I said, big ticket items, there's no doubt about it. Dishwashers, plumbing parts that we can take, we can't deplete plumbing from the building evidently. But anything that we can use, I'm gonna take and we're gonna use in our buildings.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, if it's old. Or if it's cost effective to
Yeah.
take, you're just
Well,
saying.
exactly,
like,
Right, exactly.
Not everything's interchangeable,
No,
so you
you know,
could be ending
the
up in
Plumber's gonna charge us $1,000 to take
a
out
worse
$800
situation.
sink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you could just take it and sell it, but we'll see. It all depends on what it is, what shape it's in, what it's gonna look like when you pull it out. Any other questions?
I'll just note, you also have the school nutrition revenue, but it's very similar to what you saw in slides 17 and 18, so I don't need to go over it unless you have questions about it.
Okay, so we're moving on to funding. How do we fund it? So we've covered the expenditure side, now here's the funding side. The first one is the ED 279, which is the state funding formula. And I'm gonna go over the highlights, so Norma Jean, can you open that document when you get a chance? But just as a reminder to folks is there's all these calculations, there's all these parts, which I'm gonna go over in the highlights, and then it totals it up. And the first thing it does is look at the enrollments in each town, looks at that enrollment to decide what percentage of that total will be assigned to each school. So it's the enrollment goes first, and then after that, it goes down to the I'm stuck, yeah.
Are you all set?
Is there a particular file in the drive you want to open?
It says ED 279 highlights.
Want me to send it to you again?
And if you are on a paper copy, it looks like this.
Did you find it? Okay. And then what it does, so it gives the total, it allocates totals to each of the towns based on the percentage of the enrollment. Then it goes to the town evaluation, right? And so it takes the town evaluation, multiplies it by the mill rate to give how much is going to be required locally first. Then it allocates the state side, okay? So in the highlights, you can see, our count, where we are down in our count. The count is done. The attending count is a 2-year average. So you can see we had a decrease of 19 students in pre-K 8. We had an increase of 2 students, 9 through 12, but we had an overall decrease of 17 students. So every, Vicki and Norma Jean work on that October 1 count to make sure it is as accurate as possible as it feeds in, and then April 1 count will come up, and so this is based on the October 1. We saw our EPS rate, so this is when they take, our staff costs, those benefits to the staff, other supports that go into staffing, and then it says how much does it cost per pupil. We did have an increase at the elementary level of $259, and we had an increase at the secondary level of $262. So those are important amounts, because when you get to our, the next part, operational costs, they take those numbers, they take a percent and they multiply it, okay? And that's how you get your allocation. So you can see, we did a major push again this year, and kudos to the administrators, the secretaries, our office, everything around, making sure families are filling out the forms. Because those forms are very, very important, because they feed right into those disadvantage numbers. So you can see we had an increase at K-8 disadvantage of $123,000. We had an increase of approximately $69,000 for 9 through 12. And then they have targeted disadvantage. We had an increase in both of those areas. So just in our disadvantage, we were up $361,000. That is very, that did us well there. Then our special ed, we had an increase of $133,000 in special ed. We had an increase in the high cost added district of $247,971. So overall, for the increase in the special education lines, we had $423,553. We had obviously a decrease in our debt service, so that shows 0 now. That was a decrease of $527,400. So our total allocation from the state, based on the formula, is $18,032,812.06. That is an increase of $367,859.43. So we had increase in disadvantage, we had increase in special ed, but then we had to take that decrease of the debt service off, and that's really where you see the differential. I mean, there's lots of parts, and you can look at that for me if you'd like and compare it like we do. Where is it up, where are we down? So the total allocation per town, you can see Litchfield had a $410,000 increase to their total town allocation. Sabattis had $57,584, and Wales had $14,877. So when you look at the total required local contribution, which is based on a 3-year average, the mill rate was $6.10. Last year's mill rate was 6.62, so they did bring down that mill rate. as we all know, there is a bucket, right? That 55% bucket. And then they have to create, how do we distribute that bucket based on this formula after they look at the town evaluations. So they know what the town evaluations are gonna bring in, they know what they have in the bucket for the state funds, and then they determine the mill rate. So that the mill rate determines how that is distributed, okay? So you can see that if Bob English were sitting here, we're going to pay more in property taxes to get less state funds, okay? And that's because evaluations have gone up for all three towns. So the, you can see here, the local required increased by $404,170 overall. Then you can see by each town, and then the total state contribution decreased by $36,000. And you can see that Litchfield had an increase in state, Sabattis had a decrease, and Wales had a decrease. So when you take that difference, that's where we have a decrease there, okay? So when you go back to the slide, you can see what is the difference. It's the same thing I put kind of in the highlights, but you can see in that framework. Then in the next one, you can see the state contribution and how has that been over the last 5 years. Where you can see we were up last year, down this year for state dollars. The required, you can see that we are up significantly, the 404,000. And then you can see our allocation total was up 367,000, okay? But remember, they calculate us, they take the enrollments from each town, they determine the percentage of that whole and how it's split up. And then they look at the evaluation, they calculate it against the mill rate, determine that amount that the district needs to, each town needs to pay in order to get the state funds to meet the 18 million. Okay. So that's really the state formula. So that is required in order to get the state funding. So now Sam's going to talk about, okay, well, that's the state funds, that's the required local taxes. Now Sam's going to talk about what's the additional cost and that formula.
Right, so the 6686,108, that's what we have to contribute in order to receive the 11,346,703.
Correct. Yeah, we have to raise the 6.6 million to get the 11.3 million.
Okay.
Yes. Good. Good clarification.
Just got a lot of numbers right now.
It's a lot of numbers. Exactly, it's a lot of numbers. So our cost sharing formula for the additional local contribution.
Yep, so this formula is distinct from the state formula. And what we do to calculate this is based on when it was most recently reviewed by the Finance and Facilities, what was approved as the formula to move forward was it's a straight 50-50 calculation. So it's based 50% on the valuation of each municipality, and then it's based 50% on the October 1 student count of the most recent year. So what's different about the state valuation compared to what the 279 uses is it's based on the most recent year that's published. So it's not a 3-year average, okay? So you'll see the updated state valuations that were published for each of the 3 towns, the percent that that town's valuation represents of the whole. And then for the student count, you'll see the count for each of the municipalities in our October 1 report that you review, I believe, sometime in December. The percent of each municipality for that student count. And then those percentages that you see are just averaged with a 50-50 weight, equal weight. Okay? And so your final column over there on the right-hand side is the split for the additional local contribution for each of the municipalities in the RSU. So that split is used for the additional local or the funds needed to fund the general fund above what the state allocation is from the ED 279 formula. They are also, the formula is also used to calculate the school nutrition tax assessment and adult education. So looking at specifically the additional local contribution, so this is just the general fund on slide 23. Going back a few years, similar like we did with the school nutrition program, we've just mapped out what the additional local ask was and the difference over that prior fiscal year. So you can see, some modest increases and some bigger jumps, right? So at the bottom there, just knowing that the ask was to show the impact of the SRO position, you'll see the 4 versions of the general fund budget that we've been looking at. So with Sabatis Primary open, with Sabatis Primary closed, and then with it open and without the SRO, and closed and without the SRO. So you can see the impact of those changes on the additional local ask in the general fund. Yeah, Teresa.
Have there been any changes? You mentioned the finance committee decided, is it the same as it's been every year?
It stays the same for 5 years, and then the Finance and Facilities Committee meets to review, brings forward a recommendation to the board, and I believe the board takes
Yeah.
action on it. It predates me being in this position, but I'm pretty positive the board needs to take action on it, and I believe we're due next year to review it. I will double check on that.
I did it the first year I
Yeah.
was here.
Okay.
So it's probably it's
The
my
following
3rd
years.
year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we did a whole report on it, and I think it's online, but if not, I'll send it to you, Teresa. So it broke it down, explained why we continued with the 50/50. The Department of Education recommended following the ED 279, that when they're asked, that's what they say. It's equitable in the numbers you're comparing. Like if ED 279 splits it this way, then your additional could be split the same way. The committee did not agree, we talked that out and stayed with the 50/50. So this is where a lot of misconception of Litchfield pays the most. Litchfield does in the ED 279 because they have a higher evaluation, right? But in the 50/50, Sabatis has the higher percentage. So, and I explained that to them, it's the additional local is, the higher is Sabatis. In the ED 279 required, it's Litchfield. So it just, the way the numbers, depending on how you want to do it. And we did do some different scenarios.
Yeah, we did the 80,
And we did them out like 80/20.
20, 60, 40.
Exactly, 70/30. So we've done some of those, and the committee said, I think this is the way we want to stay. But there is a report on that. Okay.
All right, so the next 4 slides will kind of take you through the tax ask of the towns for each of those 4 different things. The required local to get the state share, the additional local to finish funding the general fund, adult education and school nutrition, and compares to last year's amount. So the slides are a little chewy, there's a lot on them, but it follows the same pattern that we've looked at tonight, the 4 versions, with Sabatis Primary open, with it closed, both of those versions without an SRO. So they follow right in line with, in your packets or in the budget workshop folder. You also have the general fund revenue lined there too. So I did just want to note that we do have other revenue sources, right? We have our miscellaneous revenue. We have our state agency funds, our child development services revenue, our main care reimbursement. We do use Balance Forward, which we'll talk about a little bit here. And then we also have a small revenue line for laptop repair and technology repair. So did just want to note those other ones, but our focus has generally been on the tax assessments and what we're asking for our education programming affects the taxpayers. So those are there for your review if you have questions about them, but you can see as we go through these slides the impact or the difference in the ask in each of the towns in those 4 versions. questions on those? All right, and then the final 4 slides of this tax section will show you the tax impact. So starting with, of course, the slide number is hidden here, but it says tax
28,
impact,
yeah.
thank you.
It's 28.
Tax impact, Sabatis primary open. So the structure of these 4 slides will show you the combined ask for all 3 towns. And then it will show you the difference over the tax assessment from FY25, again, combined. And then using the most up-to-date tax calculation worksheet from each of the towns, it'll show the estimated mill increase to meet that increase. So if we're thinking about tax increase on home values, right, for every $100,000 of home value, you'll see the estimated increase for each version in each town. Okay, so if you have a home valued at $300,000, you take that and multiply by 3, $500,000, take that value in your municipality, multiply by 5. But you can see, as we've seen throughout, if we close Sabatis primary and reduce an SRO, that just continues to lessen the ask of the taxpayer and lessen that annual increase. I do just want to note too, it's an estimated annual increase. So it's not something we can say for certain, this is what it will be at this point. Questions on any of the tax impact? All right, then we'll move on to the next slide, which is about fund balance, which we've talked about a little bit in the past. I think I had shared this graphic with you, maybe in the printed version of the presentation that we didn't get all the way through the last time. So if you're curious, you might have peeked at it. But in reviewing it together, we've talked in the past about how in prior years, right? So a decade ago, the RSU4 was not in a healthy place with fund balance. In fact, RSU ran with a negative fund balance for a number of years, right? Then, as COVID happened, my best guess, since I wasn't here when it happened, but the availability of ESSER funds and ARP funds and all of those grants that came to assist schools through that difficult time allowed us to leverage those grant funds, free up some of our general fund monies, and then it helped us to build our fund balance back into a positive place. So we've had a positive fund balance since 2021, and we've been able to allocate a portion of that fund balance into the budget in those successive years since we've built it back up. Last year we applied $600,000 to the general fund, and this year I believe we have $550 slated. Just trying to project out and see where we're going to land.
We are allowed 9% to carry. So, you know, this is important funds to have, because if something came up or we get in the red somewhere or something happens, it's always good to have that that in the bank to, you know, obviously to allocate it would have to have approval, but it's there. So the next slide really talked about that in capital improvement fund, which I think you've heard us say over and over again, around really starting to access some of that fund balance and designate it. And so we're going to use $550 to reduce the taxes, and we're asking you to be considering $150,000 to be placed in a capital improvement fund, with the expectation that those funds be used to help Libby Tozier. So it's that starting to address those deferred maintenance issues by using our fund balance and designating it. It's going to be something you're going to have to wrestle with each year around what will you use it for, and how much of the fund balance is available to put in there. So, you know, we're starting in a specific amount, focus on specific items, which is those windows and the sills and the building envelope at Libby Tozier. Is we're gonna also, you know, there are long-term projects like roof and stuff that, as you said, Scott, looking at grants, those school revolving loans were not available this year. They go every other year. So we accessed those before for ADA compliance. They will be coming again for priority one. And so you'll apply again for those funds. And those are, you want to get, because they offset your costs. They are a similar percentage to your ED 279 of what the state will pay and what the schools pay. But it's,
And generally,
Yeah.
the portion that we pay over the life of the loan is at 0% interest. So
Exactly.
it's a really good deal if
Yeah.
we can get it.
exactly. So these are things that if we're not going to do a capital improvement fund, we need to start saying, are we going to hold our maintenance and try not to lose it on the floor at a budget meeting? Because it's just deferred. But the board, if, you know, if the citizens understand this is a way to help not raise taxes to help with maintenance, we're taking those tax dollars that have been raised and designate them to things that we couldn't do in the general fund. So we're gonna ask for that, you know, as we're reminded, all the towns have them to help them the same way. So we're asking the same opportunity to take that fund balance and designate it. So we want to make sure, because that's going to come up on the 16th to have you approve creating that warrant. And you can see what the article says. You have to establish it, and you have to transfer the money, and then you have to expend it, and the school board oversees it. This isn't a slush fund for the board. This is, you know, a opportunity to say it's for our capital improvement. We'll be looking at our capital improvement plans, and this round we're really asking to focus the dollars on Libby Tozier.
And I think it should be noted too that the funds for those projects at Libby Tozier are not redundantly in the general fund and in this ask for a capital improvement fund. So if the board decided that this was a non-starter and you were not interested in doing this, we would have to revise the budget. If, you know, we would pivot to Mark, the Director of Operations, and if he felt it was imperative to do those projects in the next fiscal year, that we would need to amend the budget to address those concerns and put those funds in there to support the projects.
So things to think. After we finish, we're going to take a little break and let you mull and ponder and think about what we're going to talk about next. But federal funds, people have asked about it. We're getting a lot of, obviously, ongoing updates regarding federal funds. The ESSA grant you hear, we call it ESSA, it's called Title Grants. That's your Title I, Title II. All those monies to help support our students' learning. And this just tells you our allocation is $662,000 this year. We fund 5 coaches there for Ed Tech 3s and 4% of the coordinator position, which is Shelley. Shelley oversees this grant, so 4% of her salary is in the grant. What we're hearing, especially around title grants, we get updates from our associations all the time, and we're being told that this is one to watch. That right now, we're not sure when we will hear the allocation. We don't know what the reductions may be. We don't know how it's, you know, going to play out. So we have met and gone over our carryover. So we feel, you know, somewhat confident that we have enough carryover to carry us through next year. So if there was a reduction, we have carryover funds in that title grant in order to cover us, because of some positions that have not been filled. That has caused us to have carryover. What we're already thinking about is FY27, which is, okay, we think we can get through next year if there's a reduction. It depends how big the reduction, but we feel confident we can cover that. It's going to be FY27, so we already, you know, talking with Shelley, thinking, working with her team on how to best service students with the positions we have and looking at that in a way that best serves students and our staff. So it's on the radar. But right now, we feel confident we can stay with our current staffing. Local entitlement is special education. So we get we get a $411,620 allocation. It funds an ed tech position. It funds supplies and professional development, contracted services like psychological speech and OT, and out-of-district transportation. So Justin writes a grant, just like Shelley's gonna write the grant. These are the things we need. It offsets so that we don't have to put things in the general fund. Those federal funds help us keep the general fund where it is. And we have not heard as much about local entitlement as we've heard about Title I. So we think it's just probably where the bucket's gonna land. Where's local entitlement gonna land in the federal, restructuring, federal government restructuring? We don't know yet. So we feel that is probably safer than the Title I grant. And so we'll have to wait and see, but it is on our radar. We've been talking about what ifs. Are we gonna be all set to go? So just want you to know, every other day we get a communication about be mindful that there's things coming.
Katie, where does the PBIS coach come from?
That's here. That's
in
in
there
the
as
federal
well.
funds, yeah.
Okay.
That's the five. So we have the PBIS coach, the literacy, the 2 literacy coaches, and the 2 math coaches are in there.
Okay.
That first line under
Yeah.
ESEA.
Yes, those are the coaches. So why don't we take a break, and then I think Nicole wants to let you know what is the direction you would like, where are you feeling with this budget and so forth. And then we'll talk it out. But grab a snack. And Diane made nice fresh cookies, and they're really good.
So lucky to have Diane.
Is your ski season done, Scott?
Yeah,
Yeah. Like the mountains closed or,
yeah, Sunday was the last day.
do they do, is it like pond skimming?
We're back online?
They didn't do it this year because of the weather. Yeah, that's.
I'm sorry, did not hear that.
Any slides or anything, or you're just chatting?
I believe just chatting. Thank you.
They still do. I remember at Saddleback, they used to do like the torchlight parade. at the
We
end of
do
the-
that,
You
it's
do?
usually earlier on.
That's so special.
So, I shouldn't have grabbed this cookie to eat right now, but it was really good. So what are we thinking here, guys? What do you have any additional questions, data requests you might want fulfilled? We don't really want those, but we'll do them. If needed. So we have our special meeting slated for April 16th, which is after the SPS vote, closure vote, April 8th.
Sorry, it's April 9th.
And then the 9th, we have a regular board meeting. So what we would like to do is to be able to come here April 16th at our special meeting and vote on a budget. So, get a sense of where you guys are at. Go for it, Robbie.
Yeah, as much as I supported the RSO in the past, I would think we've gone all year without it, and maybe we should, instead of having our own, supporting it on our own, maybe see if later on in the future we can work out something again. But I don't think the budget would entail that, and if we close Sabatis, I think getting down to the 3.07 without the RSO, right, Sam? I'd like to see us get down to the flat 3. I mean, we've passed 2 other budgets around that number, so I'm hoping with just the flat 3%, you know, and I'd leave it up to administration and Katie to come up with that, you know, get rid of the 0.07 and just go forward with a straight 3.
NJ, can you put slide 9 up, please?
Thank you, I was looking for it myself.
Yeah,
So you're saying you'd like to get it to a 3.3?
3 flat, yep, 3.0.
So we lied, it wasn't just a chat.
Yeah. I figured we might need to see slides.
Okay, so this is
So what would
SPS
that,
closed
how
and
much
no
would that 07 entail, Sam, do you know?
Oh, I'm sure it's de minimis.
It's like, yeah,
But however, we could save that if the insurance comes in lower.
Yeah,
well, that's what I'm saying, depending on where the insurance comes in,
yeah, we can look at how we would
but
cover that.
I would say a 3.
Okay.
I mean, I know we've worked our way down to 3 over the last 2 years
Yeah.
and been around that number and they've passed eventually, so,
Now, SPS doesn't close,
right,
are you okay with 4.9?
yeah,
Okay.
without the RSO.
No, but if you,
Let me look,
Yeah.
is that the right, okay, so 4.9.
Yes, that would be the right
Okay.
number, yeah.
so if it closed, you'd want us to get down to 3 again, but find the 0.70.
Yeah. No,
0.07.
no. I would be happy with the number with Sabatis staying open without the RSO. And that was what, 4.9?
4.9, right there.
Yes. So I-
No, it's
can
not.
I
It's
rephrase?
this one.
so
Yeah,
that I
sure.
understand?
4.9
So
you'd
you're
be
saying
favorable.
you're comfortable with either version presented with the SRO out?
Right.
with the
Right, I'm
caveat.
just saying if
Bring it down to
Sabatis
3
stays
flat.
open,
Yeah,
the
okay.
community members know it's gonna cost us that much.
Okay.
But we'll still be going without the RSO.
Anybody else wanna go?
I could not disagree more. What's the plan if you don't have an SRO? I feel like having law enforcement present is something that you cannot put a price tag on. Every time I get an email, says we had an emergency at school, staff safety and student safety is our utmost concern, almost laugh because it's like, you know what? Is it really? Because you're not doing anything to protect the kids. Like, the things that you're putting in place, are they really, I mean, there's nothing tangible there. So, not only that, but some of the programs that they have in place that they can, preventative things that they can bring, I just don't, it makes no sense to me to remove that position. Not that we've had the greatest support, but it's like, you know, better be safe than sorry. Like, let's get motivated to do something before something happens. Be prepared before something happens. Okay, that's what we really need to focus on. Personally, I would prefer to have an SRO or something of the likes, whether it be a retired military person, a retired police officer, something to build a plan and a program. I'd rather keep that and maybe look at not having a dean of students position created at Carey Ricker. I'm not sure that's necessary. You know, we're saving all this money by closing a school, yet we're creating all this other stuff. So it's, the whole point in closing the school was to save money, but now you have a 3% increase, so.
So you want an SRO, you would like to see an SRO, but do you have a
I think it's
percentage,
real
or are you
foolhardy
thinking?
not to have something.
What do you think about the two percentages with the SRO?
It's not up to me to decide, it's for the voters, but, I mean,
What would get you to a vote in 2 weeks for us? What are your thoughts on that?
I know where the number's coming from, the majority of the number's coming from, and I know that there's just nothing that can be done based on current policies, contracts, and the situation we're in. That's just the ugliness of it. And, you know, that we're going to see a minimum 3% increase year after year until the board takes a hard look at some other opportunities to make cuts. And we can't make the cuts that we need to make, so. I mean, yeah, it would have to be 3%.
3 or 3.7?
What's the difference? You know what I mean, at this point?
I don't know. I know Robbie was asking for the 3 to be 3.07 without the SRO, to see if we could drop the 0.7. We could ask Sam and Katie to tell us what the 0.70 would be. Or are you thinking that you would approve the 3.7 and you would approve the 5.53 should SPS remain open?
I mean, obviously, I'm very concerned for people that live in our district that have to see tax increases year over year.
Yeah.
I want the most minimal impact possible, but I also know there's just no way out of it. So, I mean, 3.07 would be really my target.
With SRO?
But I would rather see the SRO stay and make cuts elsewhere, like I suggested, maybe the Dean of Students position. And it doesn't even necessarily maybe we need to seek some other options outside of what we've already been seeking for the SRO.
Mm-hmm.
But.
Okay. Go ahead, Teresa.
That was my question. Are there other, I know contracting with whoever
Androscoggin
Andrew
County.
Scoggin was the big increase over Sabatis. So that's the majority of that. Is it something where we can employ someone in the district that's not contracted out? And could you give some history on when have we had an SRO, when have we not? Is it just this year, the first time we haven't had one?
Correct. I think that and I'm looking at Marco because he probably knows more. We've had an SRO. It was provided by Androscoggin County Sheriff's Department at one time, and then it shifted to Sabatis. So when I came 3 years ago, it was Sabatis Police
I
Department.
don't think we ever had Androscoggin
Oh,
County.
No, we
that's
never
what
did anything.
I thought, or Kennebec.
No, nothing.
always
No, it
Sabatis?
was nothing, it was
Nothing.
always
Always
Sabatis,
Oh,
And do we know when that started?
okay.
3 years ago,
I stand corrected. I thought it was.
4 years ago.
So we
Really?
had,
I thought, no, I thought,
One in
We had a retired officer that was a school resource officer when my youngest, who's in 7th grade, was in pre-K and kindergarten. And he was a school resource officer who had retired. And I don't know if he was employed by the district or if he was employed by Sabatis. But he was part-time.
He was employed by Sabatis.
yeah.
so I'm seeing people nod in the crowd knowing differently. Marco, do you want to speak to what you remember?
Yeah, I mean,
Over
Brian
your,
and I were,
you have to come
Sorry.
forward.
yeah, just so others can.
Because you,
hear in the
yeah, in your
recording.
tenure, what have you
yeah,
experienced?
Brian and I were just talking about it, because I think it was right around the time you started, Brian, wasn't it? Like 2018? And so we've had 3 different people in that position. And they've all been employed through Sabatis Police
Okay,
Department.
thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't want to name names, but we had a gentleman who was an SRO in Cumberland that was, had retired, if you will, from that department, but had been hired at Sabatis Police Department, and he was our first SRO, and I think he was with us for 2 or 3 years. Then we had another gentleman who was there for a very short amount of time, maybe a year, and then we had, again, they were all through Sabatis Police Department. Then we had a woman who was a police officer through the police department also. So it's been those 3 people.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Do you know if they were full-time SROs? Because I believe
No.
the prior one wasn't, right, for
No.
the past 2 years.
Well, I can tell you, the deal that we made with Sabatis was, we would pay 75% of the salary, the yearly salary, and we would use the RSO during the school year only. After that, they would go back on patrol for Sabatis when the school year ended. That was the deal that we worked out. So that's why it was only the 65,000, because we didn't have to pay for
Summer months.
and the equipment and the training and all that. Sabatis sent all our people to the academy, or they were a retired RSO that already had it.
So that was the same since we
It's been the same since we
started the
started.
SRO, you gotta say it RSO.
Yeah.
Our SRO position.
Yes,
But that position was available to us
And-
100% of the time while we were open.
well, no, many times in the past, we lost the RSO because Sabatis didn't have, SRO, sorry. Because Sabatis didn't have the manpower to supply one.
Correct.
They would pull the school resource officer and put them back on patrol
Because they didn't have enough.
because they didn't have enough patrol officers.
But was that just the most recent year? Or
No,
did
that was
occur
every
before?
year.
That occurred
That
every
it
year.
occurred every year, and that's why I complained about it. I wanted to dedicate the school resource officer to the schools during the school year. And every time, they would get pulled to go back on patrol because they had a manpower shortage.
So to answer your question, this is the first school year we haven't had anything in
Anything
quite
at
some
all.
time.
And in
Yeah.
the past, was it someone who was at, say, the high school in the office? I remember when subbing, there was someone that would be there sometimes.
Yeah, exactly, sometimes. So we had a set schedule where, I think primarily, and obviously, Katie, you could speak to this, but, the thought process really was middle school, high school, just because sometimes that's where the issues are.
And the
However, with,
population.
yeah, exactly. And then beyond that, though, I mean, that person was throughout the school district, starting relationships and helping to support in areas that they could.
Safety.
Because I do recall there was an incident, a lockdown at Libby Tozer, and the SRO was not available that day. They were out or something, sick, or they.
I think that's
So
the,
it took a long time to get a response.
that's
to
the
them.
consequence of the, sharing
Yeah.
and not being available based on their schedule or
And
their
it happened
availability.
pretty often in the last couple years.
So if we were going to go with an SRO, I mean, getting one on full-time, I said it right, yeah.
Yeah.
Getting on, one on full, now got me questioning myself. Full-time through Androscoggin County, I think would be the way we would want to go,
Yeah, absolutely.
if that's the route we chose.
I mean, school incidents aren't going down in numbers, okay? They're continuing to rise, so, you know, this is a year we don't have any. It's just, if I had it in the budget, I would put one at every school full-time. But, you know, that's not the reality of the situation. I no longer get the warm and fuzzy feeling when I drop my kids off and there was a police car there. I say, oh, okay, today's the day I can breathe easy, nothing's gonna happen. I don't get that this year.
We did consider some other options, Teresa, not to point at you, but I wanted to make sure you knew I was gonna go back to your question about other avenues, and I think maybe you brought that up too, Scott. There are some requirements they have to meet in order to be selected as an SRO, so I would love to go and get a military veteran, you know, or some sort of, even if it's, you know, it doesn't even have to be volunteer, even if it's paid. But it's not easy to do. You have to go through the DOE and get certifications, and there's gotta be requirements and qualifications. So it's possible. It's harder. But possible, not impossible.
My experience working in a school, a large high school, it was hit or miss whether we had a good security person. You know, sometimes they were aggressive towards kids, sometimes they were confrontational, sometimes they were understanding, sometimes they put hands on a kid, sometimes. So, you know, it's just like with a teacher, it's the person you hire or the person you have that really makes a difference. I definitely see Scott's point.
Nicole can tell you about the metal detectors.
I'm from Waterbury, Connecticut, guys. Like, this is nothing to me. You know, I don't even want to know what their budget was like, but, you know, we had metal detectors. We also had uniforms. You weren't allowed to wear certain colors because it caused issues.
Gangs and,
You know, we had a lot of bomb threats one year, so it was fun because we got out of school early, but, you know, that's not okay, right?
Nobody listening, that
Right,
isn't a
right.
good.
It's not-
No, that's not okay. We were in 8th grade. We thought it was fun. We didn't know.
Right.
We didn't have SROs back then. We had teachers that had to intervene, you know. Actually, who just had one? Mount Blue? Just had a bomb threat?
No. it
I don't know.
was,
We've had our
Where we're
issues
at.
with
It was
them
where
here.
we're at.
Well, lots of them. Many.
Yeah, so I mean,
They seem
I could
broken
see
up.
Scott's point, right? Because there are, and even if it isn't an on-ground incident, they are increasing.
I mean, you could ask for consensus, some
Yeah,
want to
I
keep
mean,
it in.
who wants to keep it in? I mean, we,
I just have a question. Is it
Yeah.
possible to get one from, since Litchfield's Kennebec, does Kennebec have one that would be,
I spoke to
cheaper?
Kenny and they would be similar to Androscoggin
Oh,
County.
okay.
They're full year, they're year-round employees, that's why they're very committed. And they don't get pulled because they're your assigned officer. And when I talked to both of them, remember I talked to both of them, could you provide us one this year? And they were not able to. It's like everybody else, they're understaffed, and
Yeah.
so Androscoggin said, you know, the minute you make a commitment to it and you go through your budget and you, because I told you, once we make a commitment and you want it, then we'll move forward to have them start hiring. And they would offset the costs based on when that person would start. The person, they didn't get somebody on until September 1, they're obviously not gonna charge us for July and August. So there would be some savings there. But,
are we in charge of paying the benefits or the
Yes.
benefits?
Yes.
Oh, we are.
Yeah.
we're in charge of everything that
Everything.
have to do with.
They pay nothing,
They pay nothing.
yeah.
Like the car, yeah.
And if the person that's assigned to us, if it's not a good fit, is there an option out?
Yes,
of
they,
that?
they would work with us on that. I mean, we would probably be part of the search of the person. I mean, they know what they're looking for. They provide our SROs to other districts. So, you know, they're aware of what kind of personality or
Yeah.
skill level they need to have. Yeah,
Because it's very different from just being a cop or
correct.
sheriff or,
Yeah, and they're different laws and policies and so forth there.
I would agree to trying to keep an SRO if possible. I mean, if the community takes it out, they take it out, but having been in the classroom, I know it's a benefit for teachers and for students as well. It's a good connection between school and community as well, to have somebody there.
So do we wanna
So that would be
take a
slide,
poll, right?
slide 7.
Christy, do you have any input?
I agree with everyone on the floor. I mean, in a perfect world, we would have a resource officer assigned to every school, or at least to every town. Are you guys having a hard time hearing me?
Yeah.
Not when you're talking like just now.
Yeah, I don't know if your
Okay,
phone's
is that-
moving.
I'm on my computer, but I'm on my headphones, so let me know if I can take them off if I need to. So I guess we keep it in, is what I would say, and hope that the community will support it, knowing that that's part of the increase that they're seeing, is that number.
Yeah, I agree with Christy, that we definitely point out that this is the number and why it's gone up. But it's a full-time position versus often an empty office.
Correct, yes.
Even if we could bring that to 3.50, that might help a little bit, keeping the SRO,
So we wanna
SPS
keep the
closed.
SRO. We're gonna
0.5. I mean,
potentially look at bringing it down to 3.50 if SPS is closed. But what if SPS stays open? What would you want to see out of the 5.53 now?
Yeah, that's.
I think we have to consider, I mean, at least at this point, we'll know more before our special meeting, but.
It's too bad that we couldn't have had this meeting before the vote, because people would have been more informed and say, oh, that's gonna bring our cost up. There's no way, we should close the school. Do you know what I'm saying?
Like the budget meeting before? Oh,
Just
yeah.
so they were informed, this is what it's
Yeah.
gonna look like if it's open, this is what it's gonna look like if it's closed.
Still a week before the vote.
Huh?
Still a week before the vote.
Yeah,
It'll be out.
I mean,
It's on Channel 8 tonight.
yes, that's right.
Because once the vote is done, it's done, you know, you can't go back to inform them, this is what would have happened.
Well, I mean, the special meeting isn't the public vote anyway either, right? Not the special meeting is for us to vote
Right.
the budget. I think we would wanna know which way we're gonna go before finalizing, otherwise we'd have to come back and regroup.
Yes, please.
But, I mean, all this material is gonna be available if this isn't yet. I think,
It's all out
did you
there.
put this out? This will be out tomorrow.
Yeah, I load the budget folder the day after.
Excuse me. But all the other meetings, materials are already out there and they can clearly see
But they don't.
the difference. So,
They don't read it.
I mean, the referendum clearly says what you will save if you vote to close.
the 3-something, 390, I don't know, it was 300.
It's a different number than this, but, yeah.
So, SPS open with an SRO, are you okay with 5.53?
No.
Okay, what
So
would
if
you,
SPS remains
Open.
open, no SRO.
so if SPS remains open, you would say no SRO?
Right, because we don't have the money to,
Yeah.
as much as I want an SRO.
As somebody with experience as a teacher in the district, what are your feelings about the Dean of Students position at Carrie Ricker?
Well, the Dean of Students has kind of that ability to work with students like a police officer may not know the law as much as a police officer would, but is that connection that kids can make and can connect with parents as well. If we only have one person there, I'll tell you, 3 grade levels, when I was there, 3 grade levels is a lot of grade levels to have without having somebody else to help you
And it'll be 4 grade levels.
And it'll be 4, yeah.
Well, I think some of the stuff you've touched on, which is a dean is there. The dean knows, something that happens, those people
Right.
are there on the forefront. They know the students well, they know the parents well, that if they hear a threat or they know how to act immediately about it. And yes, if it's that serious, the first call is 911 as they're doing the lockdown, the in-shelter in place, they are responding right on site. If the SRO is over here, they're doing everything as they wait for the SRO to get there, which,
Right.
So I think the dean is as important.
Yeah.
Because they are right there at the building at all times, knows the kids really well. That's my, Jenny's here, she can speak to what it would mean to have a dean at Carrie Ricker. Brian can speak to his work with the dean at the middle school. So,
I know in years past, when we didn't have an SRO or anything like that, if I had students in my classroom that I felt, even working with the principal or assistant principal, and we really were having a hard time, I would call a police officer from Sabatis and he would come over and we'd have a little meeting. So you can get them involved. They're not there, but,
It's not there, that presence,
right,
going from school to school
Right.
or
That's-
working with the younger
that's
kids.
important.
Yes,
Right.
it is important.
it is important. Yeah. Would you like either of them to come up, Scott, and talk about it?
No, thank you.
Okay.
All right, so we're thinking, oh, go ahead, Robbie.
I would be in favor of keeping the SRO, sorry, I keep using SRO, school resource officer, and totaling the budget out at 3%. Hoping
So
we
you would
can,
like the budget at 3%?
at 3%, and hoping we can get a decrease in insurance to help absorb some of those costs
with SPS closed.
with SPS closed.
I mean, we can make a list for next
Right.
meeting to bring, well, we'll know at the next meeting if it's open or closed, right?
Right,
So we could make a list for 3% either way.
you're right.
We could start working either way, what would it look like, depending on the vote for 2. So we'd be prepared to come to the meeting, knowing the outcome, to be at a 3%, whatever that outcome is. And then you would see what is that impact.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right, because I know without the RSO, we're talking 3.07. And that 07 probably isn't that big of a number.
No, 3.7.
I mean,
Right,
3.07,
so with the
And I want-
SRO
I want-
staying in, you would like us to shoot for 3%
3%.
on both,
No, just on with Sabatis closing,
just with closed, not with it open?
yeah,
Okay,
With an SRO.
with an SRO.
yes, yes,
But
you
the
would
total
like.
budget with the SRO, 3%.
Okay, so Norma Jean, you're showing slide 7, and then where would you like if it was open? Can you show slide 6? Okay, you've got 6 up right now?
I would say with the RSO, with it open, 4.5.
So can we go with an SRO?
With an SRO.
Say it right.
This slide,
With this one, 4.5. What about you, Diane? Because you said no SRO. So do you think that if, now remember, they gotta spend the time to rework this information too. I don't know if you're gonna wait till April 8th and maybe do it in the last week,
well, it's
but,
next week,
Yeah,
so
we could
we
show
would be
it next
prepped. We would be prepped for next week.
So that you
So-
can think about it. It'd be nice to have it ready to sign on the 16th.
so they'd have to rework all this and it could be for nothing, right? If it closes, right? But if the 4.5 is what it would take for you to approve it on April 16th, we can have you do that. So I get 2 at 4.5, so we're with the SRO.
Can we hear what Marco has to say about that, and maybe someone from the middle school, about having an SRO? How beneficial, just so it's out there.
I mean, I
And
can.
I definitely want make sure the superintendent holds the SRO that we do get, if we get one. to their job duties, because we've had it in the past where it kind of, you know, like you mentioned, we had an incident and they weren't there, you know, if we're gonna pay for it,
We need to have it.
it needs to
Well,
be a beneficial.
paying for it this way, the officer is dedicated to the schools year-round.
There was constant communication around those concerns.
Right, and if we're going with a different agency,
Yeah.
you know, right out of the gate.
The difference is
sure.
it's our employee, Scott. So to me, that's a big pro, is they aren't taking
We're not
that
sharing.
person. This is an
We're not
MOU
sharing.
that
Don't
says,
share.
this is your person.
Okay,
It's a much different than, oh, I need them, I'm taking them. And I can't say, no, you aren't, right? This is our person that works with us hand in hand all year round.
So who evaluates?
We do it, I mean, they're probably hand in hand,
Okay.
yeah.
Probably depends on the agreement.
Yeah, the agreement, yeah. And I have the agreement. I mean, they're ready when we're ready. And as I said, I think if you make that commitment, it's the commitment. So if there is a need for reduction, it will not be touched. It can't be. I mean, you
Right,
can't make
they
a
have a year-long
commitment
contract.
and then, right. So you make a commitment, it holds, and we have to look at other things.
And it's 175,000, right?
140,000.
140,000.
Yep.
So, do you wanna? Sure.
Speak to it. Sure.
And what are your thoughts on? I mean, you're gonna be our new super, it's out
Right,
there.
exactly.
It's public information, so you can feel free to
Weigh in.
expand and, yeah.
Sure, yeah, no, I appreciate it. So, you know, I think it really comes down to the person. You know, I think Teresa, you said it best when you talk about whether we're talking about an SRO, a security person, a teacher, whoever it might be, we're looking for the person. I mean, you do that through the interview process as best as you can, but you really don't know until that person starts working. You know, as far as benefits are concerned, you know, I agree with you, Katie. I think that it makes sense, you know, that's our employee, so it's somebody that we have, I don't want to say control over, but, you know, influence as far as where they're at and what they're doing. And then, you know, we're working in conjunction with the sheriff's department. You know, as far as benefits, you know, when we had an effective SRO, you know, I felt that, you know, it was very valuable in creating relationships with students. And then supporting us, you know, if there were any issues as far as police work were concerned. You know, and that could be safety issues, it could be drugs, it could be, you know, a number of different things.
Truancy was
Truancy,
big.
yeah, well, we did a fair amount of visits to homes at that point in time. And I mean, you know, obviously you feel a little bit better about making those trips to people's houses because you don't know what you're walking into with somebody there that's a trained police officer. You know, I will say obviously, like, and you know, I know you're not saying this, Scott, but like regardless of, you know, like you said, if we had 5 SROs, you know, there still could be an incident, you know, and something bad happen. But I think it does help mitigate the risk of something happening. So, you know, I would be in favor with it or for it. I just really think it's going to be dependent on the person. We've got to find the right fit because otherwise, you know, we're chasing somebody, or you know, it's, you know, we're not sure what's going on, or they're not there, or whatever it is, and we just can't have that, especially with the amount of money that we'd be investing in that person.
It's a 1-year contract, right? Okay, so it'd be every year.
I don't know if this is just a question I can pose right now, or just let me know if it's not. What would you see where they would be stationed? Like, you know, if you have small children, you're hoping maybe they would be there when you drop off your child and you'd feel better, but are they stationed just at one location? Do they rotate around? How do we make them?
Yeah, I mean,
Effective.
it was rotation prior to. I mean, if I remember correctly, the first SRO that we had started at 7 o'clock in the morning. And so oftentimes, you know, being just present in the parking lot was
drop-off
helpful.
time.
You know, drop-off times at the high school in particular. You know, that person would stay through the first, you know, beginning of the opening of the building, and then, you know, obviously they would be available for the elementary schools beyond that. But I think a rotation would be helpful. You know, it doesn't always have to be the same, but a rotation would be helpful just to have that presence, and they're a known entity, and you know, if people have questions, or you know, if there is an incident or something that comes up, you know, they can respond that way.
We had a calendar where they would know where the SRO was.
They would know, but not say the kids.
No,
Yeah.
the
Right.
administration stuff would know, this is where their plan is for this week.
Okay.
It's beneficial for the parents or the, I guess, for the public not to know.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you never know,
Right.
right?
That's
You're
right.
creating an
Exactly.
element of possibility.
Yeah, yeah.
The days that I dropped my kids off there and there was a police cruiser outside, they may have been in there for something completely unrelated. And maybe, even the cruiser just being there creates an
course.
element of, you know, okay, well, today's not the day I'm going in there. You know what I mean? So, maybe we just have to buy some cruisers.
Like it's the interstate, right? We'll just park them.
Park 'em.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we would like to see 4.5 with SPS open and an SRO and 3% with it closed. Thank you, Marco.
No, Scott's got something.
Here's a question.
Go ahead.
Could you, at the high school, have a dean of students position? You think you could create a similar person, not necessarily armed and trained, but to specifically work on the types of things that the SRO would normally do outside of the law enforcement piece?
Well, I mean,
like
I'm sorry.
drug prevention and building relationships and
Yeah, I mean, I would say essentially, the assistant principal's doing a lot of that work. You know, I mean, when you talk about fostering relationships and dealing with disciplinary issues and trying to implement, you know, outside organizations, you know, especially like Healthy Androscoggin, so educational aspects of things for drugs, alcohol, you know, vaping, that kind of stuff. I mean, we have that stuff happening. So I don't know that, you know, it's like, the benefit really of having an SRO is the law enforcement aspect of things, you know? I mean, that's really the benefit. Just because, you know, we're fortunate enough to have, you know, great assistant principals in the school district and deans of students, and that's the work essentially that they're doing, Scott. It's really that law enforcement piece that's, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the big benefit, you know? I mean, they can do things that I can't,
Yeah.
in a number of different ways, you know?
I think an SRO has more impact than just a dean.
Yeah, well,
At the high school level.
yeah, well, impact in the sense of like, you know, what they're legally allowed to do in comparison to what we're legally allowed
Right.
to do. That's the big difference between the two.
I also think that there's like a negative look on law enforcement in today's society. So at a young age, perhaps fostering, you know, I'm not necessarily a bad guy, I'm here to help you, that, you know, building that.
Yeah.
I grew up in the
Yeah.
days of officer friendly.
Officer friendly.
That's where that comes from, so, I mean.
Dare officers.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
mean, well, yeah, DARE came on, you know,
A little later.
just after, but we
Yeah.
had officer friendly. and
That's right.
That's kind of what my vision is for the younger grades. so.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's well said. I mean, you know, ultimately, that's what you would like to have, is that like level of respect and understanding of what somebody's job is.
Right, well, I know in the past, our, you know, school resource officers had worked the lower kids with bus etiquette.
That's
and,
right.
You know, just general knowledge in the lower grades. It's like, just being there is great for them. Having lunch with them, you know, one
It's
day a
huge.
week, or it's huge.
Yeah.
And that affects the grades going up if you know you've got the same person
Yeah.
every time. And that's one thing that we have not had with contracting with Sabatis.
That's right. It's the stability. You're
Yeah,
right.
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 Okay, so 3% with Sabatis closed, 4.5 with Sabatis. Anything else that would make you go, no, we can't do a 3% or a 4.5? Like, I'm kinda like with Scott, I mean, I would love to have less than 3, I said this to Katie, it's It's unfortunate that we have to have at least a 3%. But in doing some recent research, I will say 3% is low in comparison to comparable districts. Don't get your hopes up on that health insurance ban though.
No, I know, I'm not.
No,
I'm not.
Cause I got some,
Yeah.
research
So to
out there
go off
too.
of what you're saying, we've had budgets in the past that were not even 2% that failed. So if you're coming in low and you get beat
Yeah.
up a little bit at the public meeting,
Yeah.
now where do you go?
That's, then that's the hard conversations, right? This is the best, we think, right, at this point. We've done the line by line. We went over what some of those are.
I can't remember what was our increase last year.
Initially, the first time around?
No, the final.
the final?
4.9.
What, and the year before, it was like
1.4.
That's the year.
That's the year, yeah. I mean, we could very well end up in that situation again, right? And then we'd have to come back to the table and go, okay, where are those cuts going to be? Is it gonna be the dean of students, right? That's a teacher, that's a lifestyle, a livelihood right there. Is it gonna be more technology? Is it gonna be no ice machine? Just think, it's what came up tonight. That's what we'll have to come up. We'll have to go down deeper. I think I do want to thank everybody. I think you did a really great job, and I feel like there has been a lot of effort into keeping these line items as low as possible. I still think something's fundamentally broken in the entire country. Looking at all of these different budgets around Maine, and around the country, like $22 million, like that is just an insane amount of money. What is going on, right? But it's because, we're broken out. We have all these little different regions, and it costs money to bring them together, and it costs money to stand them up separately, right? But I still think it's an insane amount of money. But I think that it's.
1,243 kids.
Yeah, 1,243 kids, yeah.
And
It was-
200 and staff. You gotta count the staff.
Well, that's,
Yeah, but you're paying them.
Yeah.
that's the bulk of the
I'm talking
budget.
about what's it cost per
That's the bulk of
student.
the budget.
I had
And that's where you're seeing, that if you look at budgets around the state.
I had the budgets for last year for for about 6 or 7 comparable districts, which I didn't bring with me.
And we had that as one of the Q&A.
As well as like their enrollment, right?
Yeah.
So, and building number. Like I did a pretty good, jot down of what it looks like, and there's the closest one to us, I think was Lisbon, okay? They're a little different, overall, even though they look similar, but they were like $1 million less. But then the next one above us, I think was like another $10 million. Similar enrollment, similar building count. So,
There's a lot of factors, like
A
you said.
lot of
A lot of
factors.
factors, yeah.
Go ahead, Teresa.
I think I'm happy with kind of where we are with the numbers. Every year I go and look at where Monmouth is, RSU 2 and Gardner, MSAD 11. And when I went on their website yesterday, as of 3/25, Gardner's at 4.19% and Monmouth is at 5.18. Not saying that's their final, like this isn't our final. And in some previous years, we've been quite a bit higher maybe initially than they were. So I also would like to compliment departments and schools for the work they have already done. Because behind the scenes, the residents may not know that there have been each department trying to cut things before it even came to this point. Looking, at software, looking at supplies, and going through all these things, trying to find cuts before it gets to this point. That's not something I saw when I was on the other side, that part of it.
Do you have any hand raised? No. So yeah. So I
Okay,
think
so we
that,
have direction for next meeting, so we'll put that on for the night. Next meeting, we'll do a budget review. We'll do a update on what the direction was tonight.
Christy, do you have any additional info? Are you think you're on board, no pun intended, with the 3% and 4.5%?
Yeah, I'm in favor of those numbers.
Okay.
All right, well, good.
Okay.
Hopefully the snow has not started.
It wasn't supposed to start till about 2 a.m. I
Till
think,
about
but-
8. Oh, we had 8 as our last
Ooh.
notification.
So, but is there anything else you guys wanna
Anything,
send them back with, like
just, yeah. Or if you-
anything else on those lists or line items that really would, for you?
I mean, do we, oh, sorry,
go ahead.
Scott, go for it.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was wondering if we wanted to talk about the capital piece.
Yeah, we can,
Yeah, capital improvement fund.
if we think, we're
Yes.
thinking you might lean towards that direction, or anybody wanna go first? Robbie?
Yeah, I've been in favor of capital improvement fund for quite a few years, and we just couldn't cross that bridge because there was always somebody on the board that was dead set against it. But I think it's a way to let the taxpayers know that we're gonna put money away so we can invest in what we have left. Because if we don't invest in what we have left, we're gonna need another building sooner than what we need now. So by putting that money away, if we wait till there's 500,000 in it and then we spend it on, improvements to Livy Tozier, because that's where most of the money's gonna be needed. Because once Sabatis closes, Livy Tozier is, the next oldest building. And between the middle school, Carrie Ricker, and the high school, I think we're in pretty decent shape. There's been substantial improvements to the high school with the new roof, the new boilers, the new gas, you know what I mean? So consequently, I think the way things are going, we're gonna be in that building a lot longer than what we think. So we're gonna have to get the money to invest into that building. And like I said, HVAC system's gonna be over $1 million. And I don't think we can stay in that building another 5 years without doing something on that system.
I guess I'll carry out Robert English's job duty when it comes to those, his legacy. I think that it's not our money to play with. It belongs back to the taxpayers. If it's excess money, it's excess money that belongs back to the taxpayers. Pretty simple. If you have a project that needs to get done, you put it in the budget and you send it to the voters to approve it, yes or no. It's not our money, it's theirs to decide. So if you put it in the budget and they approve it, then it should be approved. But
However, it's not always approved, and I've been working in schools that have needed repair for many, many, many years,
Sure.
and the taxpayers keep cutting that money. And the reason we're in a predicament like we are is because nothing ever gets done.
so the answer is to overtax and then not, and just to overtax.
No, you don't have to have a large amount, but something to help if you have something that goes wrong right away, or to fix something, so people don't keep cutting that money when it comes to budget time.
Sure, I mean, Diane, I'm not advocating not to
Yeah.
have a backup plan or a fail-safe, some sort of extra money in case something should happen, and we do have that. We have a fund now where there's excess money, which is why we can afford to put, over $500,000 back into the budget to offset the tax expenditure. So there's money there already. What is the balance there? Was at one point, if you have, you mentioned $550,000 that we can put back in, and then you want to put 1.5 into a capital improvement fund, what then is left after that?
150,000 into the capital.
Okay, 150,000.
No, yeah.
Yeah,
Then
so, but what's
what
the
would be left?
total?
Are you asking for the audited fund balance?
The
Or
fund
it was-
balance.
Yep, 1.4.
So there's-
No,
right
it was
now-
less this year,
Yeah, it was less
1.3.
this year.
Right now, there's 1.4 left over, so,
So
there's your backup plan, I mean, Even
you
if you
said
give,
that.
even if you give $500,000 back to the taxpayers, you still have $1 million sitting there that in case something happens.
But you can spend it.
Yeah.
Is there, so I know Katie, you said that we can have a maximum of 9%. Is there a minimum? That are we required to maintain?
We've run negative in the past.
The auditors would say
But,
you gotta be above 3%.
okay.
Yeah, our auditor, yeah, they're very, they, when we asked them about it, there aren't a lot of districts that run at zero, keeping nothing because of that emergency. I mean, you're right, you run a risk of,
Statutory limit is there, like Scott said, to
Right.
keep you from piggy-banking away taxpayer money
Exactly.
and never doing anything with it.
Correct.
That's what that cap is there for.
right,
But the minimum isn't
Right.
set because you gotta do what you gotta do.
Think about that for a second. Why would they statutorily put that in place? For that reason, so that you don't tax the taxpayers excessive amounts of money for no good reason. They put a limitation on it.
yeah, I do. No, you're right. Could you raise the budget $150,000 and add fund balance of $150,000? You could. And then we'll tell you the percent is 5.6% increase the budget, they'll vote it down, and you'll be back cutting it, and then you'll cut the very thing of the 150 that you were going to fix. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, it's a catch-22, and I guess what frustrates me the most is at the town meetings, this seems to be a proactive way to address town needs, but it's not a proactive way to address school needs.
I don't
And-
believe it should be at the town level
Right,
either.
but
It's the
what-
same thing.
yeah.
And unfortunately, the
Yeah.
townspeople,
Right,
maybe
And-
were talked into something they didn't understand, but
Yeah.
either way, it's.
right.
So what happens, so this is giving us what the article will read, but what happens if those funds aren't used in accordance with what the article says? I
No,
mean,
we
it just,
would-
You're in charge of that.
Yeah,
so we're in charge of that.
you would say, we're going to do the Libby Tozier window sills and envelope, and we would do it.
Yeah,
Yeah, the capital
Yeah.
improvement fund isn't for expenses that aren't authorized by you all.
Yeah, it's a board decision.
but what about the general fund? If we said, we have, like what Scott's trying to get at, we have 1.4 million, why aren't we doing Libby Tozier?
We have to go back to the tax.
You have to, they have to vote.
You have to vote for it.
So
Trying to
by-
get it
by-
out.
I know.
yeah, by
You could put
statute,
1.5
yeah.
million in the capital improvement and spend it on an HVAC system. Yes, you could,
You're circumventing the taxpayers'
Right.
approval.
right. No, they have to approve it.
Yeah, I mean, they have to approve the expense of
Right.
it. It's in the article that goes on the budget floor. So this Article 18 that Nicole's referencing.
But not what we do with the capital improvement.
Yeah, there's a list of items that we can only spend the money on for that in the article, right, Sam?
To start the capital
Maintaining-
improvement fund?
No.
So the article is written to create it, because we don't have one right now,
Mhm.
to put a certain amount in there, right? And then to expend. So on the floor, the voters would be voting to authorize you all to have the fund, tell you, we approve this much to go in it, and then we give you the permission as the board to spend it. So the expenses that come out of it, it's not like, we would draw on that fund to go purchase staff appreciation supplies. Those purchases or those contracts would come before you. Those requests would come before you as a board.
How did you come up with that amount?
The two projects that we wanted to do in the next fiscal year at Libby Tozier totaled roughly $134,000. And so we put 150 just in case the estimates came in a little bit high.
So would that, if that should happen, would it be done before the beginning of the school year,
No.
of the new school year?
No, but remember, we have the flooring project happening at Libby Tozier before the beginning of the school year, and we have staff moving around, so that would be a lot to take on. I don't think it would be possible to do that within that
I think it was
timeframe.
gonna be before 27
Yeah.
fiscal year.
Yeah.
And then if we don't spend the whole 150, where does it go?
It sits in the cap.
It stays in the fund until you approve a project.
Until we approve a project, wouldn't you think that's better than the 1.5 million just sitting out there?
I think it should be returned to the taxpayers.
All of it,
Sure, well, no, because you need to have,
the 3%?
you need to have an emergency fund
Emergency
essentially.
fund, yeah. How about anybody else?
I mean,
We heard-
the
well-
challenge is, we didn't hear add money into the maintenance budget. Like, if the board is committed to keeping track of their, not being accused and deferring maintenance and not taking care of its buildings, then an argument can be made as the board saying they are gonna take care of their buildings, we have to put $500,000 in the budget, and we're gonna sell it to the community so they pass the budget.
But are we putting that 500,000 into our new tax,
Yes.
liability, or are we pulling it from the fund?
No, I'm saying you have to, you can't say one thing over here and one thing over here, is what I'm saying. I'm saying if it's important to take care of the buildings, what we don't hear is let's put more money in to do that and not do the capital improvement fund and hope that we can pass a budget taking care of the buildings. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying is, I always hear, you don't take care of your buildings. You don't take care of your buildings. And now we're in this spot. Now we're gonna have to pay $60 million for a new building, when if we had been, because some of the capital improvement plans, that's what your job is like, how much does it cost us annually to take care of the buildings and keep them up to date? We don't keep up with that, right? So that's where the struggle is yes, give the taxpayers back the funds, and they will be happy this first year.
Yeah.
And then when we don't have the 1.5 million next year, because we've given it back to the taxpayers, we're now asking the taxpayers back the 1.5 million that we gave you last
And
time.
that's exactly what we did.
And so now we're gonna ask for it again. So it just,
So-
it
That's
But the
just
difference
keeps.
is that on year 2, you're asking for the $1.5 million from the taxpayers, but with purpose, because it's for X, Y, and Z, and then they're approving that.
No,
Yes.
if you put
Because it's in the
1
maintenance budget, you've dedicated it to a project, it's in the budget for that.
No, what I'm saying is if we took more fund balance to balance the budget,
Mhm.
and it's not there the next year to balance the budget, you then you have a hole to fill. Right, so you're counting on 550,000 this year. If next year we did not have that 550, you are in the whole 550 before we even start.
That's exactly what happened when we
That's
formed
the
the
point.
RSU. That's why we were in the red for 5, 6, 7 years.
Right. Because if you
Because we
keep,
gave all that money back to the taxpayers that first year after forming the RSU.
The first 4
Correct.
years.
The first 4 years, we ran in the red.
Right.
Because we had to fill that hole and we couldn't.
and then
Right,
you're freezing budgets earlier, and nobody gets what they
Right.
thought they were getting, because we gotta make up the 1.5 million that we need for the following. It's a catch-22.
Many years we could increase.
I think it requires more discussion. Another time.
I was gonna ask Sam, what would that 3% be? If we were to lower our general fund to maintain it at 3%, what would that be?
You mean just what would the increase be?
What would our general fund be?
What would the total budget
Yes,
be?
thank you. It's good that you can translate what I'm saying.
How much would
speaks
we
Nicole.
reduce to get to the,
I think I told you
quite a
16,000.
challenge.
Yeah.
it's 16,000 to
Well,
get
well,
to 3.
16,000 plus 142,000, because you want to put the SRO back in. Right?
Well, you wanna do this one, you wanna do that slide. You wanna do.
Yeah, because you're talking about SPS closed.
You're doing this one. Yep. You're doing this one. So what's that 70.7 equal?
Yeah, so what I'm telling you is if you went to the 3.07 one, right? That .07 was $15,845.91, so $16,000. But you also want to put the SRO back in, which was
Right,
142.
so actually you'd
one-
be increasing the budget about 128,000. Oh, no,
No, you'd be reducing 158,000.
158,000.
Yeah, okay.
That was just for
With
conversation.
the
We
RSO,
don't have to
right.
do anything.
No, it's all right. No, it's good. Okay, so we can put for next week, we can put on the capital improvement fund and we can put the updated budget based on conversation and what we would reduce to get there. Okay, all right,
Okay?
yep,
Katie, do other schools have capital improvement funds?
yes.
Everybody's doing it.
No, everyone has been doing it.
Some have
Cool.
multiple, like
Yeah.
some do, not a capital, multiple capital improvement funds, but some have a set-aside fund for special education. So if they have all of a sudden 2 or 3 students that move in that were unexpected, high cost out of tuition placements, they have funds available to be approved by the board that wouldn't put them in the red.
Right.
Now, with the closing of St. Thomas, are you anticipating many kids coming back or no? Do you have
We've had contact about superintendent agreements. We're hearing that a lot of them are gonna go to different private schools. So at this time, we haven't heard of an influx of enrollment. Most of their students reside in Lewiston, Auburn, and that area.
Okay.
Okay, good.
And
Any-
before we wrap up, revenue sources.
Excuse me.
I believe in a previous budget meeting, we discussed some possible options for liquidation of assets. Somebody mentioned the wood boiler, or wood pellet boiler, and some other items. I didn't see that in any of this. Is that,
Yeah, so we, at Finance and Facilities last week,
It was last week.
we reviewed the capital asset list, and there was not a lot of pointing to anything that could be sold. And the difficulty with the wood pellet boiler, again, is that it's part of a lease. So unless we were able to negotiate a way for that to come out of the lease, like we can't sell or dismantle that particular item because we are indebted on it. So if we could navigate our way out of that, or renegotiate that contract with that portion removed and could settle a sale that would have us on the right side, and it made sense to do that, we could certainly look into that.
I'm scared to ask how much we're paying for something we've never used.
Well, it's hard to piece it out because it's part of a larger project. So that wood pellet boiler was part of phase 1, which involved several other projects within the high school and some other schools in the
So the
district.
Facilities and Finance Committee found no other liquidable assets we can utilize? to-
Nothing was new. I think
Nothing.
we discussed the Coyote
Yeah.
side-by-sides. But no action was taken on that. It was just discussed.
How long is that lease for?
That's our next finance and facilities meeting. We'll be going over the phases of
Yeah.
Siemens.
Can wait until then.
Okay. Anything else? Christy, anything from you? I always forget about you.
How could you forget about me? No, I'm all set.
Any word on a Sabatis board member? A new board member?
I've not heard anything.
No, I have, was it yesterday? I gotta get a follow-up for you. Talking with, Noel to see about what they're going to do. But I haven't heard what came up last night.
Nothing. I went to the meeting, it was closed. They had an executive session, that was it.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
So no news yet.
So notice to Sabatis residents, there is an opening on
Right.
the school board.
I posted it.
I see lots of people commenting on Facebook. Today is your chance. Sign up, make real change.
The, just, I want you to know, are you all right with the special meeting being at 5:30 rather than 6:30?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to note that, and I have it down there. Okay, all right, thank you, everyone. Remember, we're
you.
here, if you have questions or anything, just
Yeah.
send them to
The
us.
bottom ones are all signed.
Okay.
The only one that's
We
not
want
is
to set a date
I
when
signed
we're
the top
gonna meet.
one.
Okay, with the agenda.
Who else is on the, oh, I meant, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, one's having a baby, I guess.
Well, yeah, but does it have to be a facilities member? No, yeah, but Nicole could sign it.
It is warm in here.
Always.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Doesn't swing by.
Yeah, he's,
Do you
yeah.
do that often?
Like I said, it's only.
Well, we only have tomorrow or Friday, right?
Four other things